Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming at you with another build guide, and this time it's for the full elemental conversion Shockwave Totem Inquisitor. And this is a build that was originally built on 2.6, and I actually rebuilt it on standard right now with kind of using some of my best gear just to show you guys what it's capable of. And I may be using this build in 3.0, I'm not sure. I think I'm going to go with the Freeze Pulse one, but I just wanted to put this video out there because I think it's a very strong build for 3.0. It's even gotten even stronger than it was in 2.6 in the sense of relative strength because so many things have been nerfed, and this has remained relatively untouched. You could even argue that it's probably getting somewhat buffed in a sense of Arcane Surge being added, but all spells are getting buffed in that way. And we are losing the crit from the power charges, and we might lose an entire charge. I'm not sure if they're going to add the extra charge back in anywhere in Acts 9 or 10. So that being said, let's just get into the build guide, and I'll tell you guys about it. For the gems, we have a 6 link here: Control Destruction, Physical to Lightning, Increased Crit Strikes, Shockwave Totem, Increased Critical Damage, and Faster Casting. Now, increased critical damage can be swapped out for Elemental Focus if you're not going to bother freezing anything or shocking anything. So if you're against bosses who can't be frozen or shocked or chilled, you could throw LA Focus in there. Now, keep in mind that with the update that they made to the freeze and shock changes or the chill and shock changes, you may just want to keep increased critical damage in there because you're probably going to be able to at least chill even very high health targets, like possibly Shaper and the Guardians, because of how they remade the mechanic. So you're probably going to want to keep this in there. It might be more damage overall than Elemental Focus if you can get at least a bit of a shock on there. But yeah, that's the links. Now let's get into the gear. So the full LE conversion comes from the physical lightning support and these gloves right here. You can also upgrade to the faded version, and you'll do a bit more damage because they basically allow you to put an ignite, and I believe they give you a bit more added cold as well to spells, so that's always nice. And then for a belt, pretty standard, just using a rustic sash with good rolls on it. Uh, just a run-of-the-mill ring here. Obviously, an opal would be BIS as opposed to a diamond ring. Now, the interesting slot for the ring is Essence Worm, and as you can see, I have Hatred and Essence Worm because we're scaling elemental damage, so obviously you want something like Hatred that scales off the fizz, makes it elemental. It's just going to add even more cold damage, really helps with freezing stuff. Now, the reason why we have it in the Essence Worm is because this build doesn't get a ton of health, as you can see, and the energy shield is nice, but again, not a ton of energy shield. So I really wanted a lot of mana left over for Mind Over Matter. Right now we have the full pool, and you can kind of mess around with this a bit. So you can either not run the Essence Worm at all. I wouldn't really recommend that though, because you just cut down your mana by so much. But you can definitely do it. I like to run the Essence Worm, and then I have my full mana pool, and I'll use this jewel, what is it called, Clear Mind, just to give you a little bit of extra mana regen and a bit of spell damage, really helps the damage out. Now, the one issue that we have with the setup is if you don't run a Clarity, your mana can get a bit sketchy because the totems cost so much mana. They really need to nerf the mana cost of Shockwave Totem. It's like completely out of line with other skills. But regardless of that, you will sort of go a bit probably, and this can be a problem if you're taking heavy damage because you can get into a situation where you're so chunked out you actually can't put down another totem. That's very dangerous for hardcore. So in that case, what I would recommend is if you're running into that problem is try maybe like a low level clarity, and if you do that, you're not going to be able to use this jewel obviously, but it'll be worth it if you can't sustain your mana pool. The thing is, the jury is out a little bit because you're going to have Arcane Surge on your Orb of Storms. So Arcane Surge gives you a decent amount of mana back, and if you use Arcane Surge plus Rallying Cry, you might actually just end up having enough mana without having to use a Clarity, so you can keep the Jewel in. Not to mention the Jewel does give like, I think 20 to 30 mana regen, so it's not like worthless in terms of mana regen. You can also pick up Deep Thoughts as well. I haven't done that here. It gives you like a bigger pool and more mana. Well, more mana regen essentially, by virtue of the fact that you have a bigger pool as well as just 20% increased mana regen. So yeah, a lot of things you can do to kind of mess around with the auras there. You can also run stuff like uh, Herald of Ash if you want, and I have an alternative version of this build that I'm going to mention at the end, and I'll get into more aura changes, but those are probably pretty much the only auras you'd want to run in this case. And the thing is, you don't really get penalized for running something like Herald of Ash, because even though it's fire damage and you're doing cold and lightning, you're running Inquis, so the damage gets penned anyways. So just, it's whatever you want to do there, depending on if you're playing softcore or hardcore. Boot enchant, or the boots are pretty standard. This isn't the boot enchant, or it's not the best boot enchant. You probably want the lightning one, I believe, because you can't use the pen one because you're playing quiz anyway. The helmet, just a run-of-the-mill helmet. I don't really have the enchant on here. Obviously, you'd want the Shockwave cast speed enchant. Neck is a pretty strong neck, honestly, but nothing like super special. And then the weapons are the voids. Now, voids are going to give you maximum damage. You can run a shield and a scepter or something like that. You're just going to do like less damage. Shield and scepter is probably great for map clearing. If you're going to be bossing, I'd say though the voids are really good. And to be honest, you can still get pretty decent movement speed with your Quicksilver, as you can see, moving pretty fast here. So just kind of up to you with what you want to do there. And then with the weapon swap, we have the Jaws of Agony and the Storm Prism. Now the purpose of this is just to be able to generate charges. This character was built, like I said, kind of like a while back in a way, and then I just rebuilt it again. So it's using this Jaws of Agony shield instead of the Brian Rot flag, which I think was a relatively new unique item. Brian Rot flag is better in every sense than the shield, except for the fact that obviously you're going to have to, if you go into a boss room and you start spamming your Rallying Cry or Enduring Cry, you're going to have to wait for the cry to like cycle off. I think it's like 4 seconds before you can get more charges. So this is actually better in a fight like at Ziri, I guess, where you'll go into the boss room and you'll just quickly spam traps to get up to charges, and then you can do the fight. Whereas if you use the Brine Rot flag, you're going to have to kind of maybe wait like 10, 15 seconds to get all your charges, especially because we get a lot of power charges in this, and I think the shield only gives you 2 at a time. The one disadvantage to using this setup, though, is that when if you're in combat and you have the Brine Rot flag shield and you do a weapon swap to it and you hit Rallying Cry, you're always going to get the charges no matter what. So you can actually cut it very close. Like you can let this tick down to like 2 or 1, and you just hit your Rallying Cry and you're automatically going to go back to 8 charges. The problem with this is that if you let it tick down too low, there is a chance that you could throw traps out and not get a charge. So you don't want to let it go down like to 1 or something like that. You want to refresh it like 2 or 3 if you use this setup. Not a huge deal. And there's also like a bigger cast time on the traps. So if you're doing something that's like really dangerous, the traps might get you in more trouble than the war cry. But it's not really that noticeable usually. So it's kind of up to you guys. And then obviously we use the Storm Prism just to give the extra power charge, because when we swap back, we want to have as close to 9 as possible, because we have the 2 void batteries here, right? So that's pretty much the gear breakdown, and I'll go into the tree next. So Inquisitor, obviously, this character actually does not have Uber Lab, and the reason for that is because I just don't have Uber unlocked on standard, and this character at the time didn't do Uber Lab. The Inquisitor that I have, that I ripped to standard, doesn't have a respec, the level 95 one, the one I was doing the Freeze Pulse Totems character on last league. So I would have just used that one, but I don't actually have a respec for it, and I didn't feel like buying all the regrets because I'm kind of poor in standard. So I just used this. You're just missing like 16% more damage essentially, and 10% increased damage here. Not a huge deal, and 8% reduced damage. But yeah, you'd pretty much just pick up these first. You probably get, if you were doing like if you were rushing endgame content, or if you're just doing a speed run, you'd get Instruments of Virtue, and then you'd come down to grab Inevitable Judgment, because you're probably not going to have all your crit right away anyways. So it's not as if you're missing out on too much not getting this right away. And then you'd get this last. So, and to proc Instruments of Virtue, obviously the easiest way to do it is to use Shield Charge. The way I have it configured right here, I believe, is with a Frenzy. Yep, as you can see. This is like a GMP Frenzy setup. And just casting the Frenzy, it doesn't even have to hit, will get you the damage increase. So I believe, yeah, okay, yeah. It'll get you the damage increase. And if you hit stuff, you'll get some Frenzy charges, so that's never bad. And yes, that's how you proc that if you're not using shield charge. It can be kind of a bit of a pain in the ass, but since you have a long duration on the power charges, it's really not that bad. Other notables, we have Assassin's Mark for our curse. Pretty much have to use Assassin's Mark or, yeah, I guess Assassin's Mark, because all the other curses, the elemental curses, aren't going to do anything because you're Inquisitor. So definitely use Assassin's Mark. For Orb Storms, right now it's pretty much linked just to Power Charge on crit, but you're going to want Power Charge on crit and Arcane Surge for sure, and probably like an increased duration on there, so you might want to throw this into a 4-link instead. And then we have Ball Haste, obviously, which is really good, and Vol Lightning Trap, again, pretty good. I'm not really sure how necessary Vol Lightning Trap is going to be now that we can kind of like semi-shock bosses on our own, and this build is going to do a lot of lightning damage, but it would probably be worth it to at least invest in a Vol Lightning Trap early on when you're not doing a ton of damage. It only takes up like one slot anyway, so right now we just have these linked to increased duration. Both of those, you don't really need a max level of all haste, you just pretty much bring it as high as you can. This is for when I was using shield charge in another setup. And then for the golem, we use a lightning golem, obviously. It's pretty much just the best golem. Cast speed's better than the damage. Unless I guess if you really wanted a better chance at freezing things, you could use the damage one, but it's pretty negligible overall. And yeah, how we level this character is basically Flame Blast totems. Just I use like Firestorm before that and Freezing Pulse Fire Trap before that. A little bit of SRS for bosses. Sometimes you can stick the SRS on a totem. Helps quite a bit. And yeah, so this is pretty much the passive tree, just so you guys can see. If you're not using voids, you don't really have to get this charge. It's not a huge deal. But if you're using voids, obviously you want to get the charge. So that's pretty much it. There's a lot of other stuff you can pick up as you get more points. You can go to Light of Divinity. You can come down the Witch, come down the Shadow, invest in more health, etc. So a lot of different things you can do there. But yeah, the build sim's like pretty good on Path of Building. And I think with the mana regen changes that are going to be coming, well, not changes, but just the Arcane Surge and stuff, the mana problems are going to be solved a bit more. So it'll make this kind of more viable, because that's one of the reasons I don't really like playing it now. With the last thing I want to talk about is the flasks. So standard Quicksilver here, but Azuri's Promise and Taste of Hate are obviously really good for this build, because you're getting the 20-some% Fizz converted to Chaos as well as the Elemental converted to Chaos, and in this you're getting the straight 30% of Fizz as extra cold. Of course, obviously in beta these are going to be nerfed. Not trying to oversell you here, just like I said, I already have this character on standard, so I figured why would I basically make another one on beta when nothing's changing. It'd just be a waste of time, and I wanted to get more practice runs in. So, yep, that's pretty much it. And if I left anything out, or if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to bring it up in the comment section. I'll get back to you as soon as possible, or you can send me a message on YouTube or Reddit. It's the same name on Reddit, I believe. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and good luck tomorrow. Might post a couple more videos, just of this build doing some stuff, maybe a couple more discussion videos, and then it's gonna be time for 3.0. See you guys later.